Security risks, do not admit. Those words were carved in thick, violent red marker across 2 laminated school portraits. My 6-year-old son. My 8-year-old daughter. The security guard pressed the photos against my driver's side window so hard they bent slightly at the corners, like even the paper didn't deserve dignity. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, not meeting my eyes. "The bride gave strict instructions." He hesitated, then delivered the final cut. "She said these individuals would ruin the aesthetic." For a second, I genuinely forgot how to breathe. Inside those gates, the wedding I had personally paid $75,000 for was unfolding like a dream. Soft music drifted through the hedges. Champagne corks popped. Guests laughed under white canopies. And outside the gate, my children had been reduced to a threat. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't cry. I simply stared at the red ink slashed through my children's smiles and felt something inside me go very, very quiet. I shifted the car into reverse. My phone buzzed violently on the passenger seat. "Dad." Then a text appeared before I could even look away from the gate. "Where are you? Guests are seated. Don't make a scene." I didn't unlock the screen. I didn't explain that his grandchildren had just been blacklisted like criminals. I didn't scream or throw the phone. Instead, I opened my contacts and tapped the name directly below his. "Mr. Henderson, venue manager." He answered on the second ring, breathless, classical music bleeding into the call. "Julia, so glad you called. We were just looking for you. The photographer needs the signatory for the final checklist." "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me, "I'm currently at your front gate. Your security team has denied me entry." "What? That can't be right. I'll send someone down immediately." "No," I interrupted. "It isn't a mistake, it's a breach of contract." I glanced at the dashboard clock. 2:15 p.m. The ceremony was scheduled for 2:30. According to our agreement, I am the sole client. I signed the checks. I assumed all liability. Clause 4 clearly states that if the client is denied access during the rental period, the event becomes null and void effective immediately. Silence stretched on the line. Behind it, I could hear laughter, crystal glasses clinking, a joy I had bought with money that came from my husband's death. "Julia," he stammered, "the ceremony is in 15 minutes. You can't mean." "I mean exactly that," I said evenly. "You have 2 options. Override the bride, remove that guard, and escort me in with an apology, or acknowledge that your staff enforced a ban on the paying client." "I can't just stop a wedding," he pleaded. "Then you're operating an uninsured event without a valid contract," I replied. "Serve one more glass of champagne and it's on your expense, not mine. Shut it down." He exhaled sharply. I knew that sound. It was the sound of a man realizing he was standing on the wrong side of the law. "Understood," he whispered. I didn't hang up. I lowered the phone and watched the estate through my rearview mirror. First, the massive fountain at the center of the courtyard sputtered and died, water collapsing back into itself. Then the long driveway lights flickered and went black. Then came the silence. The string quartet cut off mid-note. The officiant's microphone let out a sharp screech before dying completely. Guests turned, confused. Servers rushed in, removing trays, capping bottles, dismantling fantasy in real time. The $75,000 dream was unraveling thread by thread. My phone exploded with calls. Dad, Sharon, Tyler, again. I answered none. I shifted into drive and pulled away from the gate. The highway opened ahead of me, gray and endless, slicing through manicured vineyards. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my chest felt hollow, scraped raw by adrenaline. The passenger seat beside me was empty. It had been empty for 3 years. "You have that insurance money just sitting there, Julia." My father's voice echoed in my head, dragging me back 6 months. We were sitting in my modest kitchen. Brittany was scrolling through her phone, not even pretending to listen. "Brittany deserves a princess day," Dad had said gently. You're comfortable. Mark left you taken care of. It's what family does. Comfortable. That's what he called the check that came with my husband's coffin. He didn't see grief. He saw a venue deposit. I wrote the check because I was trained too. For 32 years, I had been the fixer, the one who smoothed things over, the one who paid when Dad's investments failed, the one who quietly erased Sharon's credit card debt. I had learned that my value to them was transactional. If I paid, I belonged. They took Mark's legacy and used it to build a wall to keep his children out. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. They wanted wealth without the widow, beauty without the baggage. But they forgot something about fixers. We know the contracts. We know the clauses. We know where the leverage lives. I took the exit toward my neighborhood. My house was small, practical, earned. I parked in the driveway and shut off the engine. The ticking silence settled around me. Inside my chest, something heavy slammed shut. The vault. I stepped inside, but the noise followed. My phone vibrated violently on the kitchen island. Voicemails played one after another. Julia, pick up the damn phone, my father ordered. Henderson says you canceled the contract. Fix this. Then Brittany. You jealous, miserable witch. You ruined my happiness because you're a lonely widow. A notification flashed. Brittany is live. She stood in the estate parking lot, fountains dead behind her, mascara streaked perfectly for the camera. My sister hacked the venue. She's unstable. She stole the money. My hand shook. The old reflex surged. Apologize, pay, smooth it over. Then I looked into the living room. Leo and Maya were building a fortress out of couch cushions, laughing, loud, messy, alive. Security risks. The shaking stopped. Fear evaporated, replaced by something cold and solid. I wasn't the sister who needed approval anymore. I was the mother who needed to protect. I turned the phone face down. Another call came, unknown number. This is Julia, I answered, my voice sharp. Julia, this is Arthur Sterling. The groom's father, billionaire, the man my father had been desperate to impress for months. I want the truth, he said quietly. Why did you shut it down? I told him everything. The photos, the red ink, the words. The silence on the line was heavy. She did what? He asked finally. I saw the photos myself, I said. A car door slammed on his end. My son is with her, Arthur said. That's about to change. What followed didn't happen quickly. It happened deliberately. Texts came from the venue. Brittany and my stepmother demanding the refund using fake authority. I shut it down. Wire fraud, felony. Then they came to my house. My father, Sharon, Brittany, still in her ruined wedding dress. They screamed through the doorbell camera, demanding I fix everything. I listed every payment calmly. They refused to leave. Brittany snapped. She threw a landscaping rock through my living room window. Before she could throw another, Arthur's private security tackled her to the ground. Police arrived. Handcuffs closed. Arthur stood beside me as officers led her away. My son will file for annulment, he said quietly. I don't tolerate cruelty to children. That night, amid broken glass and cold pizza, my children asked if the bad noise was gone. It is, I said. I blocked every number. And I finally understood what I had really bought. Not a wedding. My freedom. The courtroom fell into a strange, uncomfortable stillness. Objection. The voice didn't come from Brittany's side. It came from the back. I turned slightly, my heart skipping a beat as Arthur Sterling's attorney stood up. Tall, calm, impeccably dressed. The kind of man who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Your Honor, he said evenly, any attempt to label my client's witness as mentally unstable without medical evidence is defamatory and irrelevant. Brittany's lawyer scoffed. Witness, she's the defendant. Arthur's lawyer didn't blink. She's also the legal and financial principal of the contract in question, which makes her testimony central, not emotional. The judge leaned back in his chair. "Counsel," he said to Brittany's lawyer, "unless you have documented proof of mental incapacity, I will not allow character assassination in this courtroom." Brittany's lawyer sat down, visibly irritated. I felt something unfamiliar. Relief. The judge turned to me again. "Ms. Carter, continue." I swallowed and nodded. "Your Honor, I arrived at the venue at 2:12 p.m. I was denied entry by security acting on the bride's instructions. I have photographic evidence of the ban." I lifted my phone with shaking hands and handed it to the clerk. The clerk passed it to the judge. The courtroom went quiet. The judge stared at the screen for a long moment. Then his jaw tightened. Across the room, I saw my father shift uncomfortably. "What exactly am I looking at?" the judge asked. "Those are my children," I said quietly. "They're school photos. The bride provided them to security with the words 'security risks. Do not admit' written across their faces." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Brittany's head snapped up. "That's out of context," she blurted. "They're loud, they ruin things, it was my wedding." The judge raised his hand sharply. "You will speak when addressed." Brittany fell silent, her lips trembling. The judge looked back at the photos. "You denied entry to the paying client's minor children." "Yes," Brittany said weakly. "It was about aesthetics." The word hung in the air like something rotten. The judge set the phone down slowly. "And you," he said, turning to me, "are the sole payer." "Yes, Your Honor." "No shared accounts, no reimbursement agreement." "No." Arthur's lawyer stood again. "Your Honor, we would like to submit bank statements showing the $75,000 transfer originated solely from Ms. Carter's account." The judge nodded. "Accepted." My father suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous," he said sharply. "She agreed to pay, she offered. This was a family arrangement." The judge's eyes snapped to him. "Sir, sit down unless you are a listed party." My father froze, then slowly sat. I had never seen anyone speak to him like that before. The judge turned back to me. "Ms. Carter, why did you choose to enforce the contract instead of resolving the matter privately?" I took a breath. "Because my children were humiliated," I said. "And because I've spent my entire life fixing problems created by people who never face consequences." The word surprised even me. "They took my husband's death benefit," I continued, voice steady now, "and used it to erase his children from their celebration. I didn't cancel a wedding. I stopped a violation." The courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke. "Ms. Wilson," he said, turning to Brittany, "did you instruct security to deny entry to Ms. Carter and her children?" Brittany hesitated. Her mother squeezed her arm. "Yes," Brittany said finally. "It was my day." The judge nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. "Court is adjourned for 15 minutes, he said. "I suggest both sides reconsider their positions." The gavel struck. I sat down, my knees suddenly weak. Arthur leaned toward me. "They didn't expect this," he whispered. "They expected you to fold." I looked across the room. My father wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the floor. And for the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying and powerful at the same time. He was losing control. This wasn't over. Not even close. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. Everyone pretended to be calm. No one was. Brittany paced in tight circles, her heels clicking sharply against the floor like a countdown. Sharon whispered urgently into her ear, one hand gripping her arm too tightly, the way people do when they're trying to control damage before it spreads. My father stood a few feet away from them, staring at his phone, jaw clenched. He wasn't scrolling. He was thinking, calculating. That was his tell. Arthur Sterling stood beside me, arms crossed, posture relaxed in a way that only comes from money and certainty. "They're panicking," he said quietly, not looking at them. "This wasn't the script." I nodded, but my attention drifted to the small conference room door at the end of the hall. Frosted glass, a brass plaque, private mediation room. That's where judges send people when they think someone is about to implode. The door opened. "Ms. Carter," the clerk said, "the judge would like to see counsel and immediate family." Immediate family. The phrase hit harder than I expected. We filed in slowly. The room was smaller than the courtroom. No audience, no elevated bench, just a long table, uncomfortable chairs, and a silence that pressed down on your chest. The judge entered last. He didn't sit right away. "I'm going to be very direct," he said, folding his hands. "What happened at that venue was not a misunderstanding. It was deliberate exclusion." Brittany crossed her arms. "It was my wedding." The judge turned to her sharply. "It was not your contract." Her mouth opened, then closed. The judge looked at my father. "Mr. Wilson, you were aware that your daughter-in-law paid for this event in full." "Yes," my father said smoothly, "but she offered, we assumed." "You assumed control," the judge cut in, "without authority." My father stiffened. I watched something flicker behind his eyes. Not anger, fear. "Ms. Carter," the judge said, turning to me, "did anyone pressure you to pay?" The room seemed to hold its breath. I could have softened it. I could have protected him. I didn't. "Yes," I said, "for months." My father's head snapped toward me. "Julia." "Repeatedly," I continued, "using my husband's death as justification, using family obligation, using guilt." Arthur's lawyer slid a folder across the table. "Your Honor," he said, "we also have text messages." The judge raised an eyebrow. "From Mr. Wilson," Arthur's lawyer continued, stating, and I quote, "You're set for life anyway, don't be selfish." My father stood up abruptly. "That's taken out of context." The judge raised a hand. "Sit down." 2 words. That was all it took. My father sat. Brittany leaned forward, eyes blazing. "This is all her fault. She did this to humiliate me. She's always been jealous." The judge looked at her for a long moment. "Ms. Wilson," he said calmly, "you wrote 'do not admit' across photographs of minor children." "They're disruptive," she snapped. "They scream, they spill things, they don't belong at a luxury event." I felt my hands curl into fists under the table. The judge didn't raise his voice. "That statement," he said, "is now part of the official court record." Brittany froze. "You understand what that means," he continued. "Every future background check, every civil proceeding, every custody or employment review." Her face drained of color. Sharon reached for her. "She didn't mean." "She meant it," the judge said flatly, "and intent matters." He turned to me again. "Ms. Carter, you enforced a contractual right. You did not act illegally." My chest tightened. "But," he added, "the accusations made against you after the fact may be a different matter entirely." My father swallowed hard. "False claims of mental instability," the judge continued, "attempted misappropriation of refunded funds, and a fraudulent power of attorney." Brittany shot to her feet. "That was my mother's idea." Sharon gasped, "How dare you?" The room exploded into overlapping voices. "Enough." The judge's voice cut through it like glass. He looked directly at my father. "You raised this situation," he said, "and you lost control of it." My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "For now," the judge continued, "this court strongly advises the plaintiffs to withdraw their suit." Brittany laughed, sharp and hysterical. "We're not withdrawing anything." Arthur finally spoke. "Then we countersue." Silence. Arthur turned his head slightly toward them. "For defamation, emotional distress, child endangerment, and attempted wire fraud." My father's face went gray. The judge nodded once. Very well, he said. Then this matter escalates. He stood. And I promise you, he added quietly, it will not be kind. The door opened again. Back to the courtroom. As we stood, my father finally looked at me. Not with authority. Not with disappointment. With something close to desperation. Julia, he said softly, we can still fix this. I met his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to. Not yet. The courtroom felt different when we walked back in. Heavier. Word had spread during the recess. People whispered. Phones were out. Even the bailiff looked uncomfortable, like he already knew how this was going to end but didn't want to watch it happen. Brittany sat stiffly beside her lawyer now. No more packing, no more confidence. Sharon kept leaning in to whisper, but Brittany barely reacted. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, glossy, unfocused. My father kept glancing at me. Not the way a father looks at his daughter. The way a gambler looks at the last chip on the table. The judge took his seat. Court is back in session. The gavel came down once. Counsel for the plaintiffs, the judge said. You may proceed, but I suggest you choose your next steps carefully. Brittany's lawyer stood, adjusted his tie, and cleared his throat. Your Honor, he began, my client maintains that while the contract may have been in Ms. Carter's name, there was an implied family understanding. No, the judge said calmly, there was. The lawyer blinked. Implied agreements do not override written contracts, the judge continued, especially not when financial coercion is alleged. My father stiffened. Arthur's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we'd like to formally submit additional evidence. The clerk approached. Arthur's lawyer didn't rush. He placed each document on the desk with deliberate care, like laying out chess pieces. Item 1, he said, text messages spanning 6 months, demonstrating sustained pressure placed on Ms. Carter to finance the wedding. The judge scanned the first page. Then the second. Then the third. His expression didn't change, but the room felt colder. Item 2, Arthur's lawyer continued. A voicemail left by Mr. Wilson after the event shut down, threatening to arrive at Ms. Carter's home if she did fix this. My father shot to his feet. That was frustration, not a threat. The judge didn't even look at him. Sit down. My father sat. Hard. Arthur's lawyer went on. Item 3. A false power of attorney document presented to the venue manager in an attempt to redirect refunded funds. The judge's head snapped up. Is that accurate? Yes, Your Honor, Arthur's lawyer replied. The venue manager has provided a sworn statement. Sharon gasped loudly. That's absurd. I was just trying to help. The judge finally looked at her. Mrs. Wilson, he said evenly, presenting forged authority to obtain funds is not help. It is fraud. Sharon's face crumpled. Brittany shook her head violently. This is insane. She planned this. She wanted attention. The judge turned to her. Ms. Wilson, he said, did you instruct security to deny entry to Ms. Carter's children? Brittany hesitated. Everyone waited. Yes, she said finally, because they're disruptive. The judge leaned forward. And did you provide photographs of those children to security? Yes. And did you write, do not admit across those photographs? Brittany's voice dropped to a whisper. Yes. The judge exhaled slowly. Let the record reflect, he said, that the plaintiff admits to intentional exclusion of minors belonging to the contract holder. He paused. Based on aesthetics. That last word landed like a sentence. My father's shoulders sagged. Arthur's lawyer spoke again. Your Honor, given the admissions made today, we move to dismiss the original suit and request immediate consideration of our countersuit. The judge nodded. I will allow it. Brittany's lawyer spun toward her. You didn't tell me about the photos, he hissed. She didn't respond. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Carter," he said, "do you understand that proceeding with a countersuit will be lengthy and public?" "Yes," I said. "It will involve scrutiny of family dynamics, financial history, and personal conduct." "Yes." He studied me. "You're prepared for that." I looked at my hands. Then I looked up. "I've been prepared my whole life," I said. The judge nodded once. "So be it." The gavel struck. Original suit dismissed. Counterclaims accepted. Discovery to begin immediately. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Brittany let out a sharp, broken sound. Sharon grabbed her arm. My father didn't move. As people began to stand, he finally spoke. "Julia," he said quietly, "you're burning everything down." I turned to him. "No," I said. "I just stopped holding it up." Arthur placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "This is where it gets uncomfortable," he said softly. "For them." As we walked out, I felt it. Not victory. Momentum. And somewhere behind us, I heard Brittany crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes when there's no one left to blame. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled like old paper and cold coffee. People stood in clusters, pretending not to stare while staring anyway. Some whispered my name. Others pointed, subtle but obvious. I kept walking, my spine straight, my face calm, even though my heart was beating so hard it hurt. Brittany burst out behind us. "Julia, wait." I didn't stop. Arthur slowed just enough to put himself slightly in front of me, not blocking her, just reminding her she no longer had access to me whenever she wanted. "You got what you wanted," Brittany snapped. "You humiliated us." I finally turned. Her makeup was smeared now. Mascara streaks cut through the carefully curated bride image she'd worn like armor. "I wanted my children treated like human beings," I said. "Everything else was your choice." Sharon rushed up, eyes sharp, voice shaking. "You could have handled this privately." I laughed once. A short, tired sound. "Privately?" I asked. "Like the way you privately called vendors behind my back, or the way you privately tried to steal a refund using a fake document." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. My father stepped closer. "Enough," he said. "This has gone too far." I looked at him. Really looked. The lines on his face were deeper than I remembered. His confidence was gone, replaced by something brittle. "Too far was when you watched them shove my kids away and said nothing," I replied. "Too far was when you told me to be quiet so the wedding wouldn't be ruined." He clenched his jaw. "They're just children," I continued. "But so was I, and you didn't protect me then either." That landed. Harder than anything else I'd said. Arthur checked his watch. "We should go," he said gently. "We have work to do." Brittany scoffed. "Oh, please, this won't last. Family always wins." Arthur looked at her. "No," he said calmly. "Truth does." We walked away. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath until I could finally breathe again. In the car, I stared out the window as the city blurred past. Discovery. That word echoed in my mind. It meant emails, bank records, vendor contracts, group chats, voice notes. All the things they assumed no one would ever line up side by side. Arthur broke the silence. "They're panicking." He said, "That's why they're loud." I nodded. "They'll try to flip the narrative," he continued. "Make you look vindictive, emotional, ungrateful." I smiled faintly. They've been doing that my whole life. Back at Arthur's office, the mood shifted from dramatic to surgical. Folders were opened. Screens lit up. Names were listed. Dates highlighted. Patterns emerged. And with every document, the story became clearer. Not just about a wedding. About control. Arthur pointed to the screen. Here, he said, this transfer. I leaned in. It was a payment I didn't remember authorizing. I didn't approve that, I said slowly. That's the point, Arthur replied. It came from your account, but not from your device. My stomach dropped. Which means, he added, someone had access. A silence settled between us. My father's voice echoed in my head. You're burning everything down. No. They had been siphoning it quietly for years. I had just turned the lights on. Arthur closed the folder. This isn't just civil anymore, he said carefully. If we proceed correctly, this could cross into criminal territory. I swallowed. Do it, I said. He studied me. No hesitation. I shook my head. I've been silent long enough. Arthur nodded once. Then we moved forward, slowly, precisely. Outside the office window, the sun began to dip. Somewhere across the city, Brittany and Sharon were probably already planning their next move. They still thought this was about pride. They didn't realize yet. This was about consequences. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Unknown numbers, missed calls, voicemails stacking on top of each other like threats wrapped in apologies. I didn't listen to them. Not yet. I already knew the pattern. First came anger. Then fear. Then the bargaining. Arthur had warned me this would happen. They'll try to reach you directly, he'd said, because once lawyers talk, control disappears. By noon, the first legal notice arrived. Then the second. Then the third. Brittany's side was throwing paper at the problem, hoping something would stick. Arthur skimmed through them, unimpressed. Posturing, he said. They're buying time. Time for what? I wondered. The answer came 2 days later. Arthur called me early in the morning. Don't panic, he said immediately. My chest tightened anyway. They've filed a motion to paint you as mentally unstable. I closed my eyes. There it was. She's overwhelmed. She's emotional. She's reacting because of stress. Same story, different courtroom. They're requesting a psychological evaluation, Arthur continued, claiming you're projecting childhood trauma. I laughed. A hollow sound. Is that their big move? For now, he replied, but it tells us something. What? They're out of evidence. At the hearing, Brittany avoided my eyes. Sharon didn't. She stared at me like I'd stolen something that belonged to her. The judge read the motion slowly. Very slowly. When he looked up, his gaze hardened. Request denied, he said. Using mental health as a litigation weapon is inappropriate and offensive. Brittany's lawyer sank back into his chair. The judge turned to Arthur. Proceed with discovery findings. Arthur stood. Your Honor, forensic review of Ms. Carter's financial accounts reveals 17 unauthorized transactions over a 4-year period. A murmur swept the room. Transactions were routed through secondary vendor accounts connected to Mrs. Sharon Wilson. Sharon's face drained of color. That's a lie, she whispered. Arthur continued. These funds were used to cover wedding-related expenses, personal travel, and private credit balances. My father gripped the bench in front of him. Arthur wasn't done. Additionally, metadata from the forged power of attorney document traces creation to a home computer registered to the Wilson residence. The judge leaned forward. Is that so? Yes, Your Honor. The courtroom went silent. Brittany finally snapped. This is ridiculous, she shouted. She owes us, after everything we did for her. The judge looked at her. What exactly did you do for her, Ms. Wilson? Brittany opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Arthur sat down. The judge removed his glasses. I am referring this matter to the district attorney, he said calmly. Effective immediately. Sharon let out a sharp cry. My father stood, shaking. "You can't do this," he said. "We're family." The judge met his eyes. Family does not grant immunity. The gavel fell. Hard. Outside the courtroom, the air felt electric. Reporters had gathered now. Cameras flashed. Microphones stretched toward us like claws. Arthur shielded me with his arm. "No comment," he said firmly. But as we moved past, I heard Brittany scream behind us. "You ruined my life." I stopped. Just for a second. I turned. "No," I said quietly. "You did." Then I walked away. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I finally played the voicemails. My father's voice cracked through the speaker. "Please," he said, "let's talk before this gets worse." I deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Because for the first time, I understood something completely. Justice doesn't rush. It waits. And then it arrives all at once. Weeks passed. Not the dramatic kind people expect in stories. No shouting. No confrontations. Just a long, grinding silence filled with paperwork, interviews, and the slow exposure of things that were never meant to see daylight. The district attorney moved quietly. That scared them more than any headline. Arthur explained it to me one evening as we sat across from each other, files spread out like a map of someone else's sins. "When prosecutors go quiet," he said, "it means they're building something solid." I nodded, tracing my finger along a bank statement. "Does it ever stop feeling surreal?" I asked. "No," he said honestly. "You just get better at standing inside it." Brittany tried again. This time, she didn't scream or accuse. She cried. A handwritten letter arrived at my house. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting immediately. Dramatic loops, heavy pressure on the pen. She wrote about stress, about pressure, about how weddings make people act out of character. She wrote about family. She wrote about forgiveness. She never wrote the words "I'm sorry." I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Then I put it in a drawer. Some things don't deserve a response. My father showed up 2 days later. Unannounced. I saw his car through the window and felt that familiar tightening in my chest. The old instinct to prepare, to soften myself, to be reasonable. I didn't open the door right away. When I finally did, he looked smaller somehow, like the authority he'd worn his whole life had finally slipped off. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, staring at the floor. "I never thought it would go this far," he said. "That's because you never thought I'd stop," I replied. He flinched. "They're talking about charges," he continued. "Real ones." I waited. "They might take the house," he said quietly. "The accounts." I met his eyes. "Those accounts were never yours." Silence stretched between us. "I need you to help fix this," he said finally. There it was. The ask. The expectation. The old dynamic trying one last time to breathe. "I already fixed it," I said, "by telling the truth." He stood abruptly. "So, you're just going to let your sister go to prison?" I stayed seated. "I didn't walk her there," I said. "She built the road herself." His face hardened. "You've changed." "Yes," I agreed. "I had to." He left without saying goodbye. That night, Arthur called. "They've offered a partial settlement," he said. "Civil side only." I closed my eyes. "Let me guess," I said. "Money back, no admission of guilt." "And a confidentiality clause," he added. I laughed softly. "They still think silence is something they can buy." Arthur paused. "I already told them no," he said, "but I wanted you to hear it from me." "Thank you," I replied. After the call ended, I stood by the window and watched the city lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere out there, Brittany was probably convincing herself she was the victim. Somewhere else, Sharon was calculating losses. And my father was finally learning what it feels like when loyalty runs out. This wasn't the climax. I could feel that. This was the tightening of the knot. The moment before everything they'd hidden snapped into place. Justice was still moving. Slowly. Deliberately. And this time, it wasn't going to miss. The final hearing came without drama. No shouting crowds, no reporters fighting for sound bites. Just a quiet courtroom and a judge who had already read everything. Arthur sat beside me, calm, composed. Across the aisle, Brittany looked hollow. Sharon avoided everyone's eyes. My father stared straight ahead, like if he didn't move, none of this would be real. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The judge didn't waste time. After reviewing the evidence submitted by the district attorney, he said, "This court finds sufficient cause to proceed with criminal charges against Sharon Wilson for fraud, forgery, and financial misrepresentation." Sharon let out a broken sound. Additionally, the judge continued, Brittany Wilson is found complicit in the misuse of funds and obstruction through false documentation. Brittany's hands began to shake. The judge turned the page. Civilly, the court orders full restitution to Ms. Julia Carter, including legal costs, damages for emotional distress, and penalties. He looked directly at me. Ms. Carter, you were exploited under the guise of family obligation. This court recognizes that clearly. My father finally looked at me. For the first time, there was no authority in his eyes. Only regret. The court also issues a permanent restraining order, preventing further contact or financial interference. The gavel came down. Judgment entered. That was it. No speeches. No applause. Just consequences. Outside, Brittany collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Sharon was escorted away by officers, still insisting this was all a misunderstanding. My father stood frozen. I walked past him. "Julia," he whispered. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "I hope someday you understand," he said. "I do," I replied calmly. "That's why I didn't save you." I walked out of the building into the sunlight. It felt warmer than I expected. Months later, life was quiet again. Not the fragile kind of quiet. The peaceful kind. The money was returned. Accounts were secured. My children slept without fear. My phone stayed silent. No demands. No guilt. No manipulation disguised as love. Arthur stopped by one afternoon with the final paperwork. "You won," he said. I shook my head. "No," I said, "I'm free." That night, I sat alone and thought about everything that had tried to break me. And failed. Because justice doesn't always look loud or heroic. Sometimes it looks like walking away clean. Whole. Unapologetic. If you stayed till the end of this story, it means you understand the power of truth and patience. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected for more real stories where silence ends and justice speaks.